Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Donal.
Thanks so much. Happy birthday, and thank you for leading. Hey, Louis. Louis Offer, Satan at the Door. It's awesome. I'm Donal. I'm an alcoholic. One of the highlights of my life, not just my sober life, was hanging out down near Venice one day, early sobriety, with Chris D. And there's this guy that literally carries a cross around, and he kind of drags his son, and he's like, it's all fire, brimstone, doomsday stuff. And then I looked down the boardwalk, and I was like, oh, Lewis is down there. Oh, this is going to be quite an encounter between the Jesus freak and the devil, you know, and it didn't disappoint. We're not a glum lot. My story, I got to get a few things out first. First of all, I'm not an expert. This is my opinion. And then I'll say I only have an opinion, and then I find myself when I get fired up about something, I'm really laying it down like it's kind of fact and factual and weird. And I have to say, I just got back from Israel and Egypt, which was an incredible trip. And great and weird in a lot of ways. But, you know, basically I went to the place where the most successful religious invention in history went down, and everybody will kill each other over weird differences. You know, they've got the dress, and the shit's chiseled in stone, and if you don't understand it correctly, at best you're wrong, and at worst you die, you know? And it really made me, and in having these conversations with everyone there, it really made me love AA. You know, because you get to have a spiritual life, and you get to believe in a greater God and power, greater than yourself, and all that stuff is easy for me, but we don't have to tell each other what it is, and someone doesn't have to tell you that you're wrong because you define it a certain way. I was born in Canada to Irish parents. We moved back to Ireland. We came to Boston when I was a little kid, and you know, we grew up this family, my mother and father. We have a lot of alcoholism on both sides of my family, and you know, we were kind of like this little group. I have 3 sisters, myself, my mom, and my dad, and they were kind of weird nomadic people. Like, they met in Africa as Catholic missionaries, and I had a lot of weird God stuff from that because my parents were both, my dad always denies it, but my dad was going to be a priest, and he got kicked out of his order of Carmelites, and he went to Africa to kind of figure things out, and then he was going to be a parish priest somewhere. He met my mother, they hooked up, and he always had huge guilt and shame because of that, and that he carries with him all the time, you know? And so then they bounced around a lot. Now my father works in Mexico. And when I was 8 years old, we moved to Nogales, Arizona. And when I was 10, we moved to Calexico, California, if you guys know where that's at. And right on. But, you know, it's not so sad because we moved up to El Centro, like, shortly thereafter. And I have to say, there's a lot of pride when I see, like, oh, shit, El Centro's on CNN as the most fucked up city in America. It's #1 in every statistical department, be it shitty or whatever, you know what I mean? So that's where I grew up, and that's where I started drinking. And, you know, my first drinks were like our neighbors were so much cooler than my parents, I thought, because they would buy their kids YZ80 Yamahas, and they had like ATCs before the three-wheeler era, and we'd go out to the desert in RVs, and I would go, and then with my friend, we'd steal Coors or Olympia beer or whatever, and I was 10, and we'd start drinking and get drunk. And I remember one of my first memories is my sister went out there with us to this place called Pinto Wash, which is out on the Mexican border, this desert place, and she got so sick, and she was 12. She was so drunk and going crazy that someone CB radioed the sheriff's department, and then they called my dad, and my dad drove out, and I saw this like super pasty, white-ass, freckly Irish man with a thick accent driving this embarrassing Buick station wagon out to the desert, where the people who were cool, like all the assholes with tans and visors, were hanging out. You know, the people I thought were like, we're weird and you're cool. And I remember drinking a beer and hiding behind a tire and watching my dad come and look for my sister while she was being hidden by some of her friends, and then watching him drive away. And, you know, that was like the first weekend I got really drunk in my life. And I'm not saying that it made me feel strong or it made me confident, or all I knew is that it took me to a place in my emotional life, be it nostalgic or sad, or it just felt right to me, and it made life feel weighty and heavy, and it made it make kind of sense. I drank a lot when I was a kid, not unlike a lot of people where I grew up, but it was just my relationship with it was really weird and really creepy and really important. I did well in school, you know, and I had a lot of problems when I first came into AA, and they were all problems of my own invention, because I felt like I'd heard someone say, well, if you went to college, you must not have been a real fucking alcoholic, you know? And I was like, well, shit, I went to college, I went to Harvard, I graduated, which is not as hard as getting in, but like, once you're there, it's the same kind of, you know, fill up a bong, watch foreign movies, and cram the night before a final, but like, but getting in was hard. But like, you know, I had intelligence, and I had gifts, and I had these different things, and then I had this problem with alcohol, and I had 3 drunk drivings before I left there, and it was good, because like finally I lost my license, but I'm like, I'm going to Boston anyway, and I actually didn't have to go to the court date or deal with it till the first year after my freshman year when I came back. But, you know, I'd been arrested a number of times, all alcohol related, and none of that mattered to me. I was young, it was not a problem. And then when I was in college, I was so into all this world that I was turned on to when I went to Boston, that you know, I was drinking a lot, but my spirit was really full. I started doing things in my life that I only had dreamt about, and meeting people that I couldn't believe I was meeting. And to make it, you know, it's more complicated than this, but the thing that happened was, once that ended and I was master of my own world, everything went to shit immediately. And there's something like, when you see an old English, I got kicked out of school for alcohol when I was a junior in El Centro. And I tried to score weed with these guys in San Diego, and they beat the shit out of me, and there was this arrest. And anyway, my parents found out, so they shipped me off to England to go live with my aunt and uncle because I was problematic. So I go to England, I'm 16 years old, and they send me, we go the first night to a Catholic club, which were these pubs associated with the Catholic Church, because Irish and Catholic people are kind of a minority. And so anyway, my uncle sends me to go get Guinness, and I'm like, I'm 16, I can't go up to the bar. And he's like, sure, just go to the fucking bar, they'll give you a fucking Guinness here. So I go up, and I'm like, can I have a Guinness, please? And they're like, sure, how many pints you want? And I'm like, 4 is good, you know, and then, and I was like, I'm in fucking heaven in this place, you know? And I started working at an Irish bar, and above it, it's like spirits, ales, blah, blah, blah. And the spirits part of it is when you are empty of spirit, alcohol fills that hole. And it works. It really works. I love alcohol. I love drugs. You know, I'm not here to say any of that stuff is bad. It's all our friend. When I was a kid and I was hurting and I was sad, it was like my antidepressant or my friend or my thing. Or when I chain smoked 3 packs of Marlboro Reds a day, wherever I went in the world, I had like 20 buddies in a box. You know, all of these things were important to me. And they work until the day that they fucking own you. And one day they say, we're not your blanket. We own your ass, dude. You are a shriveled little grommet of a human being. And so anyway, what happened was after college, I got owned. And I started smoking rock, and really bad things happened to me, and I was in trouble. And I owed a lot of people money, and I was a mooch, and I was a piece of shit, and I was a liar. And I came out to LA, and I remember, and I told someone this story. Anyway, this friend of mine was in a band that I used to road manage, and they were recording a record, and it was very exciting for them and for everybody who knew them. And so I'm hanging out, you know, and mooching off of them. And I'm like, I owe $40,000 to people in New York, you know, like in $20 increments here and there, and everyone wants to beat the shit out of me. So I come out to LA, and I'm the guy on the phone, and I get these calls every day now. Like, if they had caller ID back then, they'd be like, don't pick it up, you know, because this asshole wants something. So I wanted a place to stay. I needed food. I needed lodging, you know. So anyway, they're doing this record, so I'm hanging out doing this record with them. Meaning I'm hanging out in the area playing pinball, getting on the phone, ordering food. Someone's doing a run. I'm like, can you get me a 12-pack? Get just Bud and maybe a bottle of Johnny Walker would be good, and this and that and this and that. And making long-distance calls. And I was making this long-distance call and telling this friend of mine that we were making this record in L.A., and it was cool. And I hung up the phone, and my best friend, who was the guitar player, he said, hey, listen, man, just got to tell you something. You're not making this fucking record, asshole. You don't play guitar. You don't play drums. You don't sing. You don't write the songs. You don't contribute to this in any way. So don't fucking confuse your life with what we're doing here creatively. And it was like the coldest slam that I've ever experienced in my life, and a really important one, you know? Because I'd become someone who I hated. When they left town, I had nowhere to live. I went back to El Centro, California, and I was a 25-year-old Harvard graduate getting into a fight with a dude at Gio's Mobile Home Park over crystal meth while both his daughters were running around with no diapers, peeing on the floor, and it's 4 in the morning, and the neighbors are calling the cops, you know? And I was talking to Louie about it. And alcoholism, for anybody in this room, is whatever you are. Look, if you're not a guitar player, if you get sober, you're not going to fucking be Stevie Ray Vaughan. But whatever it is that you do, and there's something that all of us, that we can do, some gift we have, whatever it is, and it's like if you look at space from any direction in like a Hubble telescope, they have this space spectrometry. They can basically, what they do is they see through motion and heat that space is expanding all the time. But from wherever you are, it looks like it's expanding in that opposite direction from wherever you are, as if you're in the center of the universe. And it's like whatever you are as an alcoholic, whatever you want it to be, it's jamming that way while you're jamming to Shitville with your alcoholism as fast as humanly possible. You know what I mean? So when you peer at something, and believe me, man, it's whatever your dreams are, like, and God will put something in your life, like, you know, if you dreamt of whatever it was, if you dreamt of playing baseball or something, while you've pissed your pants and someone's beating your ass and your jaw's broken and you're laying on a sidewalk somewhere, you will glance up and you'll be in front of like some old school, like Montgomery Ward or something, and you'll see a TV on and there'll be like a baseball game going on or something. And it'll just be like, that's who you could have been, dude, and this is who you are. So that's who I was, you know, and I decided I'd had enough. I didn't know how to deal with having enough. I'd been to 2 AA meetings in New York. It didn't make sense to me because the God shit and the step stuff, and it's fine for you. And a couple of people shared who I was like, that sounds like bullshit to me. The math doesn't add up. Fine for you, not for me, blah, blah, blah. And like you said, it was like, you know, it swings both ways. So I took it the other way, and I went further and further down. But at least I knew there was a place to come. And I looked in the yellow pages, and I saw alcoholics, you know, blah, blah, blah. Alcoholics Anonymous Center, West Hollywood Drug and Alcohol Center. And I took a bus up San Vicente and I walked into this place. And that was in, I'd quit drinking 2 days before on May 3rd, 1991. I'd had enough. You know, it wasn't a super dramatic last drink. It was just that the 892nd thousandth fucking time that I was sitting around and hating myself. And I looked up at the clock, and it was like, and I've only looked up at a clock like both of my kids when they were born, and when I quit drinking. I remember I was at the Cat and Fiddle, and I looked up, and I'm like, it's 11:32 p.m., and I fucking want to kill myself. I'm not drinking anymore. And I was with this group of people from Boston, and I got up and I split. I was taking care of pit bulls down on Adams Boulevard. I found a place to live in LA, you know? And it worked, and I got sober. And, you know, to me, that place is like Tibet. I got sober. I got a $5 an hour job, you know, filing stuff at Unical at this company downtown. And I went to AA meetings at this drug and alcohol center place, and I thank God for sandwiches. And I went overboard and bought every homeless asshole there cigarettes and sandwiches, and, you know, and I was like, give, and I had no, whatever. I was learning, and it was fun, and we laughed a lot. The first meeting I went to really sucked. It was like these guys talking about AA. And they talked about mainstream AA, which I've never heard in a meeting since. But my first meeting where I'm like, I'm ready, I'm willing, I'm fucking willing. Okay, lay it on me. What's up? I show up a little late, and immediately, like, there's like 4 losers with weird glances, like, where was I? Oh yeah. Webster's defines spirituality. I'm like, what the fuck is this? It's like Fresno, like junior college philosophy 101, blah, blah, blah. So I was sitting there, and and it was weird. So I went outside I knew I had to get sober, but I didn't want this. And I went outside, and the guy behind the counter, this guy named Chris, was like, oh yeah, those guys are assholes in there. And I'm like, whoa, you know, pod member A referring to pod member B as asshole. That's interesting. Is it allowed in Sector 7, you know? Because here's the deal, like all of you probably, I don't want to belong to some shit where there's good news and holding hands and we have secret words and secret handshakes, where they're like, at 10 years you get a fucking special seat, you know? Where they refer to people as like Zondor, or like, you know, it's like, whoa. And I have to say about all of that religious stuff, when I went to Israel, it's like, does it have to have costumes? Do they have to be so intractable about, like, this was written, and it's like, it was fucking translated 800 times by people who never met that person or this person, you know? I had an old hippie friend, and he used to say to me, man, religion's like, you know, people saying, my imaginary friend can kick your imaginary friend's ass. And they're like, how can my friend be imaginary? Look at my hair. Look at the shoe I wear and the special hat. There's nothing imaginary about that. And it's like, fuck, get me back to AA land, man. Because, you know, and believe me, I'm not against religion. Whatever, I don't know the answer. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe that is. One thing that did make sense over there was I was talking to this Muslim guy, and we were talking about Christianity. He goes, it's very hard for me to understand that man as God, you know, and because you cannot see God and you cannot represent him in drawings. And I'm like, you know, like whatever God is, God's magic and fantastic. And when you're there, you're like, you know, what was weird about it was I was driving down by the Red Sea and by Masada, and my friend was with me who grew up in San Diego, and he's hung out with me in my hometown a lot. And he goes, you know what's really weird? And I go, yeah, that this is a lot like the Imperial Valley. It's like driving by the Salton Sea, and you're going down into Baja, and I'm like, I'm home, man. I am home. But, you know, I don't mean to... The thing is, life is magic. And when you come to AA, and you said it so beautifully, man, it's not like, okay, here's the bad news. Because I heard this in my mind when I first came in. I have to diagnose myself as an alcoholic. Fuck, that means I'm always, and when people are like, I'm sick today. I mean, I was really sick when I came in, but I'm sick. And it seemed to me like it was like you're always in the debt category, you know? You're always on the negatron, and you have to kind of come up, and it's like what I didn't understand about it was like, no, you're this beautiful being that's part of this great life creative force, and you're in this universe, and you have this thing that just wants to kill you or keep you down. Who knows why? I don't. But the greatest gift is that you discover you have it. Because when you discover you have it, you can discard it. And when you discard it, you take off. And you're not in the negatron, blah, blah, blah. You're flying, you know? And it's like, what if someone who had a peanut allergy that was killing them just could never figure out, like, that every time they eat peanuts, they ended up in the fucking hospital. Like, fuck, I'm in the hospital again. I don't know. I had the peanut butter sandwich, which I have every time before I go to the hospital. And I don't know what is it because it's Thursday or like, it's, you know what? So when people fight it, I'm like, fucking pretend you're allergic to peanuts, dude. It's easy. Put the shit down. What's the fucking problem? You've pissed your pants. Your kids hate you. You have nowhere to live. You know, you have no job. You used to have friends. You used to have promise. You have none of this because of alcohol. And you sit there and fucking lecture to me about how you got it together because you sleep under the sand on the fucking beach, you know, and it regulates your body temperature. I went to my ex's house today and I was dropping my kids off and we just came back from, I live up in Oregon and she's having a rough time. She's one of us, which is God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, you know, and she just had another baby, which is really tiring and hard. And so she was like, yeah, I mean, I have a grapevine. I haven't been able to go to meetings, and I've never really read, it's like the meeting in the meeting in a book, you know, or a magazine meeting if you can't. And so I picked it up and I was leafing through it, and I don't know what, there was this tiny section, and the person was like, you know, here's the deal. When I got sober, I had $52 in a bank account, which I didn't have. No car, this, and that. And then they talked about what they had in their life, and it was so black and white, bare bones, you know? Yeah, all the other amazing shit, sure, it's here for you. But for some people, all you want to hear, you know, like you need to hear that all that other stuff, the real meat and potato kind of stuff, it just gets better. And that's where the steps come into play, you know? Because the steps are your little ladder out of bullshit land. And we talk about it a lot. I'm not a good AA person. I'm a really bad sponsor. There's a lot of things that I don't do well in here, you know. And part of the problem I have is, and I'm also busy because life gave me a big life back, and I have kids and this stuff. And every once in a while, I'm hanging in that zone where someone's like, "Hey, man, sponsor me." And you're like, "Okay, cool. All right, call me. Let's just get into the steps." Like my friend Chris did the first night I went to the Drug and Alcohol Center when he was like, "Are you an alcoholic?" "Yes." "Okay. Well, I don't believe in God." And he's like, "Stand in front of a 40-foot wave, dude. Who wins? Are you the most powerful being in the universe?" "No." "Okay, fine. Fucking, you're making progress there, you know?" So I jump into the steps with people. And then someone's like, "Well, you know, so I called her and it was like, I guess like her ex was over there." I'm like, whoa, hold on, dude, I'm not 15. Like, we can't get into this shit about boyfriend, girlfriend crap. Like, if we're close friends, that's cool, but we need to work on steps, you know? We need to get into this shit. And some people are like, "No, you don't understand, dude. The most important thing to me is the $112 I owe the fucking, you know, Verizon Wireless, or the girlfriend with the 3 kids who loves me one day and then fucked her ex-husband the next day." And it's like, God, you're so squabbling in the world of the fucking Lilliputian tiny shit. And when I talk about the steps, I'm not talking about some boring, I'm talking about the little spaceship that takes you out of there. And everyone's like, "Fuck the spaceship, dude. Have you seen this chick's ass? If you saw her, man, yesterday, you would understand why I've spent 18 years ruining my..." It's like, dude, the ladder out is over here if you need it, you know? And you'll deal with that stuff when you deal with the steps. And they're easy, and all they are is fearless and thorough. You go through your life. You start with mom and dad and this and that, your family, you know, and you go down the list, and you absolutely look at those moments where you hurt somebody, and they're hard, but you go through them. You don't avoid them and lie about them. And at the end of it, you have this little list, too, and you get to burn this thing with someone and go, "You know what? It's between you, another person, and God." Right? You got no secrets anymore. And then we go, "All right, look, you know, my friend was like, this is where you owe money to this dude, this boss that you ripped off, and yeah, you got to contact them." and say, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous now, because you can bust your own anonymity and say, I'm sober, but back then I lived a life that I'm not proud of, and this is what I did to you, and I'd like to make it right. And this is how I could propose to make it right to you, because I don't have all of that right now. But if that's not cool with you, I totally understand. I would like to hear your ideas, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed. And then you continue to take inventory, and then you have a little bit of a spiritual awakening, and you help other people. When I was in Israel, I made really good friends. This friend of mine, this woman, she let me stay in her apartment in Tel Aviv because she's traveling. And I met her brother, and we were hanging out a lot. And he's like the smartest guy I've ever met. He teaches at Hebrew University, and he's teaching at Yale next year, and he's a biologist and a historian. And so he was just talking, he was writing this book about the history of this guy that came up with this, named George Price, who actually came up with a mathematical equation for altruism, which is just helping others. And so he was talking about how in the animal kingdom, even though it seems to go against Darwinian Darwinian survival, kind of survival of the fittest theorems, that there are these organisms that will basically give of themselves to help others in their group, to help the entire group. And it was this weird notion of like, oh yeah, that's, yeah, you give to get back, and whatever you give, you keep giving it away as fast as you can, and it comes back. And of course we don't always believe it, and of course we don't always practice it. Like I had a good run going on the other side of the fence on AA gave me a career and a life and great jobs and all this stuff. And then when things get really tight for me, and Louis remembers because he was living at my pad a couple of years ago, and I had a big house and a tennis court, and I was sweating like fucking all this child support and bills and this and that. It's like, hey man, we could open a rehab, Yeah. And I'm like, when the finances aren't great, like immediately I'm jumping to either I can open a rehab or I can get my dad, who has one of those Sentry things and works in Mexico, and he's worked for 35 years and he knows everybody. I'm like, we could just run shit across the border in the trunk of his car. They'll never fucking stop him. Like it happens in an instant. Sketchy, skeevy, connivey, fucking weird, and there's no morality involved. It's just like what's got to be done, and it's so weird. But I haven't done either, and God provides. God provides. And I was listening to my kids. I'm trying to force them. I was driving down from Oregon today. We made the long drive down. And thank you, John, for asking me to come and be here. And I was listening to this history of the world for kids, and and it's a little over their heads, but they were talking about Lao Tzu and the Tao, and it's like, when you just let it go and you just be and you don't try so hard and get out of your own way, life happens, good or bad, and that's what AA's kind of taught me the most. I have to say, it's weird. There's certain things I have. Let me see where we're at. I have tons of opinions about shit, and they are mine, and I'll give them, but they're not AA's, and they're not official, and they're not sanctioned, And I feel like, yeah, there are times I want to run and tell the world about this thing, but it's attraction rather than promotion. Because what I love about AA is all of the stuff that I found kind of funky and objectionable in other organizations don't exist here. If you want a better life, come. If you don't, God bless you. Fucking leave. Someone's going to need that seat. And if you die, it's sad, but it reminds me what happens when you go out and what happens if I went out, And what's sad is how many people do die around here, and yeah, it's sad, and we'll have a potluck at Radford or some weird shit, and then 6 months later, you're like, holy shit, I forgot totally about that dude. He was a close friend of mine. He's dead, and I haven't given him a moment's thought in 4 months, and that's sad, and it scares me, And it's unnecessary. It doesn't have to happen. There's no excuse or reason for you to pick up or use ever again. The evidence is clear in your life, Only if you want a shitty life, which is an option. And I understand, because when I first discovered I was an alcoholic, which I knew when I was young, It wasn't like, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm normal, man. Nah, everybody parties. I had never had any of that. I knew I had a weird, creepy relationship with this thing that like 1,000 generations of weird, pasty, freckly, Irish, fucking drunk losers. It was genetically, I was like the perfect, you know, prototype A for this thing. But it was whether I cared or not. It was whether I cared or not. And I understand the thing with your mom too, and I had it with my family. And I didn't want to hurt people. I just didn't want to be like, I don't fucking care about me. And I'm going to show you so much that you don't care about me. How can I stop you from caring about me? You know, what nasty things can I do? And they're heartbreaking to look back at. And there is nothing of that that can't be healed through this process, which is beautiful, you know. You'll find people that you had really bad things with will become some of your deepest and best friends. And you will not be afraid to face anybody on planet Earth ever again. There's no one in the world that you hope that you won't see when you're walking down the street somewhere. You know, either through shame or even smaller stuff like you owe them or whatever, because you make it right in your life. And it feels so good to live this concrete life. To the new people, we're all new in here. You know? So keep coming back, like I hope to keep coming back. And I was talking to my friend Leah before the meeting. I went to Israel, I went to Oregon with my kids. I've never had a nanny. You know, sometimes it's hard to go to meetings, and when I don't go, I spin. And there's always that shit like, oh, you've been sober for 18 years, man. You still have to go to those things? And it's like, oh, it's so hard to describe. It's like there's no have to. It's like, you know, my soul gets recharged every time I go. My spirit is lifted, you know? And not because, and there's all that weird shit, like, someone's like, yeah, I got 12 years, but I still come to the center to newcomers to give what I got to these new people. And I'm like, wow, when I get 12 years, I guess, fuck, wow, then you're on top of the mountain, you know? And the thing about the winners and losers is someone with 2 days can fucking give comfort to someone with 24 years who's losing it, you know? The only benefit of time, and there is a benefit, because on the other side of the coin, if you're someone who's like, I don't give a shit, we just got today, fuck it. Today, right? Well, then you don't get the great prize of learning how to put together day after day when, yeah, your mom dies, or you have a big job come through, or something falls apart, you know? And you learn that you don't have to drink or use no matter what through an experience like that, and you deny yourself that knowledge if every time you have something good or bad, you use it as an excuse to run out and use, and just say, we got 24 hours, that's all we got, you know? Someone said, hey, stick with the winners. And that was always a weird thing. And hiring and firing sponsors and weird word shit that I've always had kind of issues with. Whatever, they're mine. It's no big deal. And I asked this older guy who was really cool about my issues. And he goes, well, winners and losers, we all take turns, you know. And I'm like, wow, that makes sense. I take turns. I take a turn, you know. Being winner today, loser tomorrow. Hiring and firing, you know, we just help each other around here. You know that I fucking fired him. Really? Can I read about it in the LA Times tomorrow? Fuck you. Who are you? I mean, hire, fire. We work with each other. If it doesn't work out, find someone else. You know, they get all emotional. They're like, oh, I really got to tell you, man, that just what I need. I'm like, dude, if you don't want to work with me, that's fine. Can we cut this short before it gets like crazy? I mean, I'll give you what I know, you know. My friend Chris, he always sponsors about 800 people at the same time. He is such a master of just like, let's get on the phone and get it done. And it's amazing to watch him work with other people. And yes, we spend hours talking to each other. And yes, you have friends here that you go through the worst things in the world with. And there's a lot of people in this room who I count among those friends who I've walked through really hard stuff with, and they've always been there for me, you know? My best friends are in AA, and I have a lot of good friends who aren't. I wanted to bridge back to that life that I always dreamt about when I first came here. I didn't want to be popular in an anonymous program. I didn't want to be made clear in Zondor 7. I didn't want the secret handshake. I don't want the fucking plaque. I was like, how do I get that bridge back to normal life of people doing what they've dreamt about doing and being responsible parents, and how do you buy cars and mortgages and stuff like that. I'm into it. I want to know. I don't want to be that homeless dude. I don't want to be the mooch, you know? I don't want to be the family heartbreaker. I don't want to be the dude with the most promise from a small town who ended up being the guy in the police blotter in the Imperial Valley Press, you know? And AA showed me all of those things, just nuts and bolts of it too. And that's what you're going to get around here. And if you're like me and you put some time together, you know, the only thing it buys me sometimes is like these weird trips where I can't go to AA. But God, it's given me such an amazing perspective on what this weird spiritual community that we create together and changes, you know? And anytime I saw that weird intractability of the book says, and I always think that we realize we only know a little. More will be disclosed and revealed to us, and let's get together. But we do know that we need a spiritual life to do these things. And we have found that these things help, you know, and we implore you to try and do them this way because it can help you. And it was just made so much sense to me. You know, so just, I love it here. And I hope all of you love it here too. And, you know, I'm not going to talk about the expert, Louis, but Louis was like, oh, you got to tell that story about the expert guy, because there was an expert guy basically who was this huge AA expert and was always demanding of people in AA and scaring newcomers off because they didn't know it was on page 32. So when a new person walks in and they're like, I'm confused and I don't know if I believe, what's on 32? Do you want it? And they're like, whatever it is that I need in my life, I don't want fucking what you've got, you know? And there's always people chasing new people out who are the experts. And so my friend Chris and I were like living in this $300 a month apartment in Hollywood our first year, and we were both working at the Drug and Alcohol Center because I got a job there as a janitor. And anyway, we saw this, we were watching Cops, and there was a sting operation on this guy. You know, like he offered for $20 to give a blowjob to this undercover cop in the back of this limo, and they had the whole limo set up with cameras and shit. And this guy was wearing acid wash pants and no shirt, and we were like, you know, he had this recognizable tattoo, and I'm like, holy fuck, Chris, that's Tony, man. But you know what? He still knew what was on page 32 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous while he was sucking that cop's fucking willy. But beware the expert. We all know only a little. More will be revealed collectively. God bless you all, and thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.